Hi, I'm Pamela from Pamela's Patterns, and welcome to my studio. I'm going to be showing you the techniques that you will need to use to construct your no VPL undies, and we're going to start off with looking at the pattern. So the pattern looks a little different. This is the high cut undies, this is the low cut undies, and I just wanted to show these because the pattern does look so different, how it actually works onto the fabric here. If you were making these from stretch lace, you would take the lace and fold it in half again, and then the pattern would actually go right on the fold and right on the edge of the lace, folding the top part down until it actually fits on the lace. Depending on the width of the lace depends on how high the undies are able to go. Once you get your pattern and your fabric cut out, then you need to check for the stitch that you're going to use. This is how they look when they're opened up. I bet you would never in a million years guess that this will be underwear in just a few short minutes. Probably doesn't look like any other pattern you've ever used before. And so when you put these together, it's right sides together, and you're stitching what I call the smile of the pattern. It's the part that curves up the most. What you'll see here on these two styles are two different stitches. One stitch here would be done on your sewing machine, and it is just a slight zigzag stitch. As I was stitching, I stretched the fabric a little bit, and with the combination of stretching the fabric a little bit and that zigzag, you can see that I have a nice stretchy seam that won't pop when I'm wearing it. I used the edge of my presser foot as a guide right along the edge of the fabric, giving myself a generous 1/4 inch seam. On this pair, I used my serger. Now most sergers, when you sew a 4-thread serge, they're going to be super stretchy, but check yours out first just to make sure, because you want to really be able to pull that and not have that stitch pop. So those would be the first seams that you would be stitching. If you're doing the full cut undies, I did these. So this is the back here and the front, and I just stitched all the way from one to the other, leaving a little thread tail in between, because then it makes it really easy for me to flip this, stitch across the bottom crotch area, and then that would be ready. And as you can see, you could use your sewing machine or your serger for these steps, and then that would be all together there. After you get that crotch seam sewn, it's actually the center front and center back, then you're going to put on the cotton liner. It's easier to do while this is in the flat stage. The stitch that I used is called a 3-step zigzag stitch, and it is like a zigzag except that it does 3 stitches on the zig and 3 stitches on the zag. In the pattern it will tell you a width and a length recommended that you can use for this stitch, and you'll be using this stitch a lot in the construction of the underwear and also for the slips. And so I've just centered that on there, and what I tell my customers when they're making them in class is that I just center them on for the first one. After you wear your underwear, if you need to position them in a different spot, well, they're your undies. You can put that cotton panel wherever you would like. The next thing you're going to do is to sew your side seams. So now the cotton liner is in, just sew up the side seams, and then it's ready for elastic. You're going to check in your pattern, and there is a measurement chart for all the different styles and the different sizes of elastic that you're going to need to use. Cut your elastic to the size recommended. You can always change it for your second pair if you need them to be a little looser or a little tighter. And I have just seamed just right sides together the elastic into a circle. That was just using a straight stitch. Then what I've done is I have quartered my elastic. So I take the elastic and fold it in half and put a pin in the halfway point. Then match up that halfway point to the seam and put a pin in each quarter point. The underwear is already quartered because you have a center front, center back, and 2 side seams that are all equal. So that is all ready to go, and then you can pin it in. Now the full cut undies do have a front and back, but the high cut and the low cut they do not. They're just the front and the back are exactly the same. When you put this elastic on, I work with the underwear inside out and put the right side of the elastic to the right side of the underwear with the picot edge, the lacy edge, facing down. Then just move along and pin all the quarter points together. So match up seam allowance with the quarter points, and the elastic, the flat edge of the elastic is towards the top, the picot edge is facing down, and it's right sides together. On the underwear, you'll notice that there is really very little extra elastic that has to be stretched in. It's pretty much a 1-to-1 ratio, since underwear are what are called a negative ease garment. In other words, they're a little bit smaller than your body, and so they don't require a lot of extra in there. So see, that'll stretch right in. And then the next step is at the sewing machine. I'm at the sewing machine. I have it set up for my 3-step zigzag, and I've got the elastic on top, the underwear on the bottom, and I'm ready to stitch. If you have a button on your machine to always make your needle end down, that's going to be the easiest way for you to do this. Now I'm going to stretch from pin to pin and then finger pin halfway in between. I'll let go with this hand and then stretch this in as I stitch. If I stretch it a little bit, then the stitches won't ever pop when I'm pulling them on. That needle down holds that in place, and then go to your pin. Again, stretch from pin to pin, finger pin halfway in between, I'm trying to get my stitching as close as possible to the picot edge, the scallop edge. I'm doing this in black so that you can see it easily, but I'm trying to get my stitching to be as close to that picot edge as possible, because now when that turns over, you just see a little bit of that edge sticking up from the top. So my second row of stitching, using the same 3-step zigzag, is now going to be on the right side of the fabric. For this, I'm only going to finger pin to the end of the bed of my sewing machine. Pull the fabric down, grab it from each side, and stretch. Your goal here is to have the stitch kind of going on and off of that bottom part of the elastic. And then you can see the results here is just a nice little edge sticking up, and when you use thread that matches your fabric, this stitch pretty much disappears right into the fabric. It's really nice. I want to show you the hem. Again, very easily done. It's just turned under and zigzagged with that 3-step zigzag, stretching a little as you go. That gives you a nice flat finish and a real stretchy edge. Very easy to do. When you're all done with this, those 2 steps, you'll be done with your underwear. The last thing that I'd like to show you is the slips, and pretty much you've covered all of the techniques that you need to make the slips. So there are just 2 seams, one on each side, and again you can use a serger or the narrow zigzag. The waist is done exactly the same way as we did the undies, except for this time there is more fabric than there is elastic, because the elastic is cut smaller than your waist so that it won't fall off when you have a dress or a slip on. And so you do have to stretch the elastic to fit. So it just ends up looking a little more gathered. That's the first step. And then when you're done, you simply fold it over and do your finished stitching. As far as the hem goes, if you're using a knit fabric that doesn't ravel, you can do it the same as we did with the undies. But when you're doing a fabric like this, which is a stretch woven, which has a little bit of ravel, then you just do a 1/4 inch double turn and then use that 3-step zigzag to stitch it down just as you did on the hem of the undies. Very easy to do. I wanted to show you one last thing just in case you wanted to embellish your slip with some lace. If you'd like to use a lace for the bottom of your slip, which I think always looks really pretty, then what you do is you line up the lace with the bottom of the slipped fabric. And then with that 3-step zigzag, I just stitched around the top of the scallops of the lace. Sometimes it's a straight edge, sometimes it has a little scallop. Now here I did it in black so that you could really see it. But if you look at it on this side, you can't hardly see that thread at all because it just blends right in. And then when you're done, you just go to the back of the slip and you trim away right along the edge of the stitching. And that's all there is to it. And then you will have a real pretty lace edge, and it's just the length of your slip because you put the lace right at the very bottom of your slip. So that's how easy it is to do a little embellishment. I hope that you enjoyed all the new techniques that we did for this pattern and that you have a lot of fun making undies, slips, and cami illusions. Thank you so much.